Okay, so this is going to be kind of a different video today. Normally I would talk about obviously my progress in the organic or the meta dropshipping space. But today I wanted to tell you guys a little story about how me and my friends together made about, in total, and this is a very rough estimate, $65,000 in revenue by doing Etsy dropshipping. So Etsy dropshipping is a business model in which you go on Etsy and instead of making the products yourself like you're supposed to, because Etsy is a marketplace where you're only supposed to do handmade goods, and instead of doing that, you take advantage of their algorithmic system that places your products in front of people through Etsy themselves, and you source the products from China or from a supplier. That is what dropshipping is. And you pretty much just take care of the order and send it to them, then you get the money. So by doing this business model, which is relatively simple, it's not easy to do it, but it's very simple. I had a group of friends who we made in total, again, it was about $65,000 altogether. Let me lower that a little bit. So how did this start? So for a long time I was trying to run products on Shopify, and the products were not necessarily hitting as I wanted. I was just like testing things every now and then, and I was being very, very inconsistent. At this time, I had a job, and so I was using some of the funds from the job to fund the Shopify dropshipping. Now, my videos were completely garbage. This was before I started doing content creation full time in California. So my skills in content creation were not very, very good, and therefore my videos were not getting any fucking views at all.
I heard you're into cars. Well, you're gonna like this. The limo screen is the world's best gadget for your car. Use it to piss off drivers, make people laugh, or just display whatever you want. Thank me later.
At this time, I was getting back in contact with my first pretty much ever friend who lived in Utah, and I lived in California. Now we live together, but that's a story for a different day. And we started talking about moving in together and doing all this shit and some of the online things that we were doing. Now, he told me that he had started doing something called Etsy dropshipping that he found on the Andrew Tate Hustler and University. So he found this on Hustler University. Say what you will about him or whatever, but he found this on there. And so he started telling me about this Etsy dropshipping model, and I was kind of interested, but I was more focused on trying to do the dropshipping on Shopify. Then he showed me some of the results that he had gotten after about 2 weeks of starting this business. And he told me that pretty much all you have to do is bulk post a bunch of products, and eventually Etsy would push them out. So I remember 1 week during, I believe it was in the winter. Yeah, it was a couple of days before Christmas. I went over and visited in Utah, and he showed me the proof that it was working, and he was selling, I believe, an LED mirror on Etsy. And I remember that we went to sleep, woke up the next morning, and he had over 4 sales, and he was selling each mirror at about $50. So he made $200 in one night. That completely impressed me, and I went back home, and I started my own little store. So a couple of weeks go by, and I'm learning how to do this and how to really get into this shit. And all of a sudden, we're continuing texting each other, talking about all this shit, and he tells me that he runs a new product and this product was a blue flower bouquet. And this was a couple of weeks before Valentine's Day. This was 2023. So he tells me about this product, and he posts it. The next day, it gets 2 sales. The day after that, it got 4. The day after that, it got 8. And the day after that, it got about 30 sales. So we were talking about this happening to him. In the meantime, I had my own store, and I was making about 1 or 2 sales a week. And eventually, it completely takes off. And his flower bouquet makes about $15,000 in 1 week. Now, I don't have the screenshot of the all-time, and I do have screenshots of the daily. So this is one of the screenshots right here that I'm going to show you guys, where he made $2,000 in 1 day. So I saw that, and I completely became obsessed with Etsy dropshipping, and I told myself I am going to make this work no matter what. So I continued my store, and something kind of interesting happened, which it was either a make or break for a lot of people, and for me it was a make. When I was making the store, again, let me emphasize the fact that you are not technically allowed to do this on Etsy. Etsy does not like dropshipping, and Etsy has ways to figure out if you're dropshipping or not. When I had first started, no one told me how to avoid these bans. So my first store got banned. And when you get banned on Etsy, your social security gets banned, as well as your phone number, your email, and your credit card. So all of your information that you use for a store gets completely banned, and you also get IP banned. So it was impossible for me to start a new store. And at around this same time, my friend was also banned because of the suspicion of fraudulent activity because of how many sales he was getting, and unfortunately he couldn't ship them all in time that he told them. It was about a 2 to 5 processing time, but the supplier was not processing that in the right amount of time, and some of the sales fell behind, and unfortunately he got banned too, so he completely stopped. But I tried to find more ways to get back into it, and so I found a community of people doing Etsy dropshipping, and it was called Etsy Mafia. So Etsy Mafia was ran by these 2 guys. I believe Jacob Duddles is one of them, and Jamie something. I forgot exactly what their names were, but they seemed like very, very trustworthy people. So I purchased their community, and it was about $80 or $60 a month on Discord. And I started learning about all these ways to avoid bans, how to make a new account, how to do this. And so I found that if you create an LLC, you can make a new account under a new IP. So what I had to do was make a proxy for this new IP, and have this proxy running while so it doesn't seem like it's I don't know how to explain. It's kind of a complicated process, but it's a way of having an IP locked into one place as long as you keep paying the subscription for this proxy. So it was about $4 a month for this proxy. So I paid the proxy, and keep in mind, guys, I had about $300 left in my bank account at this time. I had quit my job. I was not working, and I had $300 left, and it cost about $200 for the LLC. So I was going to make this work, or I was going to go back and get a job and keep trying. Fortunately, it worked. I got the LLC, and with a very, 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 very long and tedious process, I was able to get back onto Etsy without them knowing that it was the same person who had been banned before. The reason that you could do this is because with an LLC, you don't necessarily have to put in your social security information, because an LLC has an EIN number. that almost counts as a social security number for your business. So instead of putting my personal info, I put the information of the business. I made a new store, and I warmed up the account by purchasing a couple of things on Etsy and then looking at things and making sure I look like a real person, not like a bot. And I started generating sales. I remember I made a gothic clothing store that within the first 2 days made me a sale. And it kept generating me sales and kept on doing it. And I was like, well, this is fucking working. Let me make another store. So with my LLC, I was able to make a new store because LLCs were not connected. Every single time you made a new account with an LLC, it was almost as if it was a new account. But I think there was a limit to this, and it was about 3 or 4 accounts that you could make with an LLC. So I made a new account, and I started selling other types of clothing. So everything I was selling on Etsy was drop shipped clothing. I was getting everything from AliExpress, literally every single thing. I was making like 3 to 4 listings a day, posting them every single day. Sorry, I need some little drink. And again, I had $200, $300 in my account, and it costs money also to make the Etsy page. So I was down to pretty much my last. I was pretty much down to my last $40. And then I remember I needed to spend money for something else, and I had literally $5 in my bank account, and it costed money to list items on Etsy. So when I made the store, I told myself I'm going to choose the best 5 items that I think would sell on Etsy and list them. And I spent my last $5 on, I don't know what the math is on that, couple of listings, and I literally had like 40 cents left in my bank account. And the next day I made a sale. And the day after that I made another sale, and I kept listing, and slowly my bank account started going up, and I started making more sales, and I started listing more things, which made me more sales. And because the algorithm just kept pushing my clothes. I don't know what it was about gothic clothing on Etsy, but a lot of people wanted to buy it. And so around this time, I start telling all of my friends about this business model, and we made a group chat on Instagram called the Wolves of Etsy. And I had invited a couple of my friends on there, and we started talking about how to do this, and I told them how to avoid getting banned in the first place so that they didn't have to deal with the fact that they had to get an LLC to get back on. So we were pretty careful about it. And I remember making a couple of stores co-op mode with one of my friends, and I would go over to his house and we would work on the store, and it started generating sales. Just like that. And then I worked on another store with another friend, and it started making sales. And all of a sudden, every single person in my friend group was making sales on Etsy. Some more than others. Some were picking niches that were not that great and then started a new store. Some had pretty decent engagement and a lot of sales. So yeah, everybody was making money, everybody was making sales, and every time we would hang out, it's everything we would talk about is Etsy dropshipping this. How do we do this? How do we make another store? We need to continue doing this. How do we avoid getting banned? You got a handmade policy, I got a handmade policy, which was it was just like this little warning that you would get when Etsy would realize that your product was not handmade, and then give you a warning. Yes, so we would talk about how to avoid those, how to use AI to change the pictures from AliExpress. This was kind of before you could really use AI to change an image like really drastically. So we were just taking the pictures from AliExpress, and we used this website called Photo Room to change the background, and then we tried all these different AIs to put the photos of the clothing on like different girls and different people that were not real, and we tried so many things. So eventually everybody was making a decent amount of money, and we were trying to scale, but being very careful about it because we knew that Etsy, if they ban us, it would be really, really, really hard to get back on there. And I remember that one of my friends had an Easter store almost, and started generating a lot of sales on these socks. And it was these cat socks that he was selling. And he was making about 4 or 5 sales a day. And then out of nowhere, Etsy completely banned his account. And everybody went fucking feral. And they started, I remember Etsy has this thing where if you feel, typically if you are a seller on there, and if you feel like you're behind on your orders, you put your store on vacation mode, which makes it so that your stuff is not seen, but your store is still there. So every time we would freak out, we would put our stores on vacation mode. That was like our shield from the Etsy warlords, the Etsy police. And so he got banned, and he said, well, shit, guys, I'm fucking out of luck, so I'm done. You guys keep going. And he stopped doing it. And so everybody put their store on vacation mode for a little bit and laid low. Again, this was not allowed to be done on Etsy, so we were being very, very careful. It's not that it was illegal or anything, it was just against their policy. So every time we would get a handmade policy or some sort of warning, we would put our store on vacation mode. And then I think at this time I had about I had about 3 different stores running. No, sorry, 4. There were 3 that I had on my own, and there was 1 that I had with one of my friends that we were running together and then splitting the profits. And then everybody kind of started making different stores, multiple stores. But eventually, and actually before I get into this, let me show you guys all of the proof. Here's some of the screenshots of like one of my friends' store, and I had a different store, and then this one. I don't have all of the information because, again, I was banned, so I can't even get back on there to see the amount that I made, but I did make an estimate, and it was about $65,000 total, everybody all together. But eventually what started happening was the Etsy police were catching up to the Etsy dropshippers. Etsy Mafia, the Discord that I was paying for, started running a little bit behind on the information on how to avoid the bans and how to do this and how to do that, and it was getting a little too complicated that it just wasn't something viable anymore, and everybody knew that. It was just getting a little crazy. People were getting banned left and right, even people that were just selling on there and not dropshipping, but everybody was getting banned left and right over stupid reasons. And and eventually I remember one of my friends who was making like I think about $1,000 a month, he had his store completely banned, and then that turned him off from running products on Etsy. And so there were about 4 of us left that were still running it. I was still running my 3 stores, and we just couldn't keep up. We couldn't keep up with any of the new standards that Etsy was putting in place, or the updates, or things that they were doing to try to get dropshippers away from the platform. It was getting harder and harder to dropship on there, to be honest with you. And we would not list as many items a day because that would make more people see it, and then more people could and the more people that saw it meant that Etsy was more aware of your store, and they could do a check on it and things like that. So eventually it just got a little hard to maintain all of the stores. I'm sure there's still people doing Etsy dropshipping in some way, but I'm not one of them anymore. And I don't think I would really like to go back to that, because it was just kind of stupid to worry about getting banned, and the fact that it wasn't part of their policy, and it just, I don't know, it just felt weird to do it. But eventually the Etsy police kind of got to to everybody. Um, and eventually, one of my stores got banned, and then the other one got banned, and the other one got banned, and every single store pretty much got banned. I think there's still two guys that every now and then make sales on Etsy because they weren't banned and they don't really list anything, so it's just like kind of passive income, but it's really not much at all anymore. Um, but pretty much everybody got banned on Etsy, and we made a pretty decent amount of money altogether. Uh, but since then, I've been that's why I've been trying to figure out some other things online, and it's just proof that if you stick to one thing, it can most definitely work in your favor. And I was completely obsessed with this idea of making Etsy work, and it literally took me from my last 40 cents, 50 cents, a dollar, I don't know how much it was exactly, it literally took me from that to making, I believe I made about 25,000 in revenue, 27, even, maybe even more, could be less, but I know that I made a good amount of money on there, starting from complete scratch, and even got banned, went back on there. But it's just proof that if you stick to one thing, it will absolutely work in your favor, no matter what it is, even if it's something that is against the policy of the software, against the policy of the website. You can still make it work. There's people that do crazy things to make money and crazy fucking methods. Don't scam though, but there's other ways to do it. But I just wanted to tell you guys that, just as a little story, as a little bit of lore of what happened to me. And if you guys ever want to hop on Etsy, I could give you guys some tips. I personally would not recommend it right now, to be honest with you. But if you do want to try it out yourself and you have an account that has not been banned, give it a try. Maybe it'll work for you. Maybe it's different now, because this was over a year ago that's happened. And then I moved out. I went to Texas and figured out my own little online entrepreneur journey here, and that is what I'm documenting right now. But that is what happened on Etsy. And yeah, it's just proof of concept that anything can work if you just become delusional and obsessed with it. It will absolutely work. Maybe it'll ban you at some point, or you'll not be able to do it anymore. But if you are obsessed, you can make things work. That was my little story for today.